All right, guys, good morning. Welcome to another week. Today's lesson is 5.10, Methods of Data Collection, and our aim is how can we collect data. Now, this may feel redundant, but this is a new topic. We are done with sampling methods, so I hope you guys got something out of that last unit. All right, today's do now is as follows. Suppose Miss Beck asked you to complete a two-part lab. In the first part, you were asked to observe an ecosystem. In the second part, you were asked to experiment with an ecosystem. My question for you is how would your actions change from part one to part two? Now, this is an opinion based question, so there's no wrong answer, but when you're done, come back and check slide number 3 so that you can see my response. All right, so talk about my response, right? How would your actions change from part one to part two? So in part one, I would simply watch the ecosystem. Part two, however, I would alter the ecosystem in some way. I may add a new species in, I may change the climate, I may change the food cycle, the food web, but I'm going to do something to alter it. All right, so now let's talk about these two things. What we're talking about today is observational studies and experiments. So, an observational study is a way for researchers to understand cause and effect relationships. So big difference between what we previously did and what we're doing in the next few days is survey data is more like opinion and rel- people's opinions on topics and things. Also, sampling could be used as a way to draw the samples for an observational study and experiment. This is much more about the data collection than it is about the sample collection, if that makes sense. So, in an observational study, researchers do not alter variables, they simply view them. So, just like the ecosystem example, you don't change the ecosystem, you just observe it. What does it look like? What are the players in it? What are the components? And observational studies, so there's two types. One is retrospective. So, this is done using past historical data or information. So, this would be like looking at the 1919 flu pandemic and deciding what were the mortality rates. In other words, what percentage of people died based off that data in 1919. A prospective study is an observational study where subjects are pre-selected and data is taken real time. This would be like if I wanted to give some or test some effect on different types of online learning. So I could observe how you guys do on certain quizzes in real time. Now, let's talk about an experiment. So an experiment is a controlled study in which the researcher attempts to understand the cause and effect relationships. So very similar to observational studies. However, there's one key difference. So in the experiment, right, you will always have multiple groups. In an experiment, you will always be altering some aspect of that design. So number one, you always need to have random assignment of groups. Number two, and this is what I was mentioning, you need to make sure you have a variable to alter known as a factor. So that could be things like medication, things like food, things like diet, things like exposure to sun, anything you could think of that is something that you could change as a researcher. Now, when we talk about the effect of that factor, right, the effect of that variable, a response variable is what we call that. So your response variable would be the effect of sunlight on humans. The response variable would be the effect of the new diet on humans. And now, the two groups are very important, right? So the test group receives the treatment. The test group is the group that you're changing the variable on. So if you were looking at diet in humans, the test group would be the group that you give the new diet to. If you're thinking about the example in the do now, the test group would be whatever you changed, the group that you changed the ecosystem in some way for. And then the control group is the group that does not receive the treatment. The placebo group, we also call that. Um, so if you were doing medicine, right, the most common thing is The test group receives the new medication. The control group receives a placebo effect or a placebo pill. Usually it's just like a sugar pill. Now, this I'm not going to go through. This is a video that explains an observational study versus an experiment in a little more detail. What I want you guys to do is I want you to look at the scenario, and then I asked you to design both a study, an observational study, as well as an experiment with the same example. So the example is in early 2007, a larger than usual number of cats and dogs developed kidney failure. Many died. Initially, researchers didn't know why, so they used an observational study to investigate. That's the first one. The second one is same scenario. However, the manufacturer now claims that the food is safe, but before it can be released, it must be tested. Again, design an observational study for the first one, design and experiment for the second one. When you're done, come back to these slides, and on the next slide will be my exemplar responses. Yours may be a little different, but you definitely want to make sure you hit the aspects that I explained. Okay, so how would you design this survey? Well, first off, I would use a retrospective study. So I'd be looking at historical data from 2007 to look at those deaths, and then I would check for a common variable. Is there a certain diet that they were all on? Is there a certain breed that they all were? Those are things that I'm going to be looking for to see if there's anything common, if I can make some sort of pattern, if there was some sort of cause and effect. Now with the experiment, I have two groups. The factor is going to be the food in this case because the manufacturer wants to make sure it's safe. So the test group would get the new food in question. The control group would receive an alternative food known to be safe. And then the response failure would be abundance in kidney failure in each group. So we want to see, is there a big difference in the percentage of kidney failure between the group that got the new food and the group that got the quote unquote safe food? So now for your independent work, right, you have these three questions. You simply need to tell me, is it an observational study or an experiment? And then why is that the case? Now, tomorrow I will post the exemplar responses so you can check your results. So be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions, as always, email me, text me, call me. I will be available throughout the day. All right. Have a great day, guys, and talk to some of you soon.